Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, my homeowner association sued me for an outrageous amount of money over a kiddie pool in my yard. They claim I am violating HOA bylaws even though my kids are just trying to cool off. Here is how I dealt with the HOA. Let's dive right into the story. The first one starts like this. I'm not an innocent person by any means, and I do enjoy messing with people when they think it's a good idea to mess with me. This little fact will be coming into play much later in the story, but I wanted to tell you now. I also feel fine telling you right off the bat that I hate the HOA that I live within, even before I was having issues with them. You wouldn't believe how happy I was to find out the new home I got was in an area with an optional HOA. So for some reason I have not been seeing too many of those and instead more and more mandatory ones. I was asked at least 5 times if I was sure I didn't want to join before I even officially moved into the home. I was sure, and I already knew of enough horror stories and how bad being in an HOA could be. I did not have any intention of joining one, especially this one, and at the same time, if I was proven wrong and it was a rare good HOA, I could always join later. I don't want to say exactly where I live, but in the summer it gets hot. To make matters worse, we were having rolling blackouts. For those that luckily don't need to know what that is, I will give a quick rundown. The city turns power off voluntarily to small areas and then the next one, this preventing a full outage for the entire city. I don't like dealing with the hot weather and no AC to be able to cool myself off. And you know who hates it even more than I do? My 4-year-old daughter. At that age, there is zero explaining about why I cannot make things cold and use the magic cold machine. I had to find another solution and I was lucky enough to own the 2 things I needed, a kiddie pool and a hose. Who was I to know that this simple act would cause a lawsuit for over $300,000? If I knew then, I still probably would have done it, but maybe not in the front yard. So I fill it up with nice cold water and soon my daughter is splashing around and having the time of her life. In her mind, I'm a genius engineer to come up with this idea. I also have our lab continuously trying to jump in as well, and my daughter encouraging him. However, then a wild HOA member locked eyes with me, so I was forced into battle. HOA member, what do you think you're doing? Me, trying to keep my kid and dog from overheating. HOA guy, I know you're new here, but we have serious rules against this kind of thing. Me, oh, you don't understand. Actually, I'm not. I do understand, because I'm looking at it right now. You cannot have a kiddie pool or a kid splashing around in the yard. It's against policy. Me, I was trying to tell you that I'm not an HOA member, so that does not apply to me. HOA, seeing you might encourage other HOA members to go and break the rules. Just because you don't have the money to join does not mean that you can mock those who do and cause chaos. Me, chaos? Really? From my kid playing in a pool on a hot summer day? HOA, I can let you off with a warning this time because you are new. But just know that if you try and disturb the gentle peace of this neighborhood with your actions, we will have no choice but to come over you with legal action. I felt like I was being hazed or something, like a bunch of neighbors would pop out with cameras and we would all laugh about the look I had on my face. No, she was totally serious that me having a kiddie pool was gonna cause something awful. I did not join the HOA, so I would not have to deal with their crap, and now I was standing there getting told off by them. Not to even mention her comments about me not joining due to money, which I didn't even want to dignify with a response. The next rolling blackout happened and it was even hotter than the last one. Of course, I was gonna fill up the kiddie pool again, so my child and pet didn't have to be uncomfortable. Round 2 fight didn't happen as I expected because nobody showed up to yell at me this time. I wanted to really believe that the person I was speaking to last time realized how stupid they were being, and that was why I did not see them again. That naive part of my mind died many years ago though, and I was expecting the worst possible scenario to happen already. Lucky me, I guess, because it only took 2 weeks before I received a letter in the mail. I was being sued by the HOA for $348,000. They decided that was the suitable amount for damages I caused by breaking HOA guidelines. I got a lawyer and showed him the letter along with the fact that I was not even a member of this HOA at all. He was amazed that this was even going to court and told me that he would be shocked if he was not able to get it dropped before then. There were many discussions between my lawyer and the HOA lawyer due to what I had done. Their side was talking like I was a criminal that killed a bunch of people instead of a mom guilty of the heinous crime of kiddie pool fun. They did not want to drop the case, and at one point the only thing they did to budge was lowering the amount I would have to pay, but in exchange I would join the HOA. They were suing me and still trying to recruit me at the same time. I have no idea what Twilight Zone neighborhood I had moved into, but I was starting to regret it if they were what I would end up dealing with for years on end. Since it did not get dropped, we had to go to court to get this entire thing settled. I could tell that their lawyer was not even happy about this going that far. I was not paying much attention as I heard their side of the story about 10 times by this point. It was against HOA rules, it was causing chaos, blah blah blah. My side was also the same, of me not being part of the HOA, so none of what they were talking about applied to me. The judge agreed that there was no reason I couldn't use a kiddie pool as long as it was on my property and I was not an HOA member. He even made a joke that I could fill my yard with kiddie pools and it would still be fine as long as I didn't break any trespassing laws. It was meant as a joke, but it gave me a very evil revenge plan in my mind. Basically, they messed with me and now it was my turn to mess back with them. I was not the only person with an overheated and fuzzy child in the neighborhood. Just one that could do something about it. So I went and bought as many kiddie pools as I could. I set them all up in my front yard and filled them with nice cool water. I then invited every single parent with small children to come over and enjoy a kiddie pool day. Before I knew it, there were over a dozen parents with children coming to my yard to cool off. They were complaining about chaos and now I had a ton of people creating something much closer to actual chaos. I was not charging them or anything, so I couldn't get in trouble for an illegal business or something like that. It was actually an amazing way to meet some of my neighbors with children the same age as my daughter. They were all grateful, and let's just say that I was given enough food that summer as gifts that I didn't really need to cook until the weather finally got into a cooler autumn. And yeah, Ripe Stars, that is probably the best outcome I could have ever imagined. The HOA losing in court, and then OP getting this brilliant petty revenge and the neighborhood coming together. Absolutely beautiful. If you like these HOA stories, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even leave a comment because that would help me tremendously. The next one is another HOA story and it is titled HOA Forces Themselves on Me. So I purchased my house in 2015, not even a thought of an HOA in the village. At the time my neighbors were the cemetery to the west, 5 acres of woodland to the north, neighbor's house away to the east and south frontage onto a secondary highway with land dropping off on the far side. Ideal location for compromising hub's mentality of middle of nowhere, anti-social stance and me wanting at least neighbors within screaming distance. But then fast forward to 2021. Land parcel to the north sold to some numbered company and then the one neighbor we had listed his house for sale. As discovered after the fact, Mark sincerely apologized when he realized what happened. The same company bought his house and land in early 2022. They razed his house and outbuildings and applied for rezoning. So far, nothing concerns me. Well, they start subdividing the land for lots, apply to have road allowances and water services. No wastewater service available because, rural village. This means to those not familiar that they have to allow square footage on the lots for a septic system, which for a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom house is minimum 750 square foot, with a specific setback from the adjacent property lines. Also, the township I live in has no requirements for fence permits, just height rules for front line of house line, 4 foot versus backyard 6 foot, and you may not install the fence over the property line and, unless agreed upon in writing prior to fence installation, it may not be installed on the property line with the adjoining neighbor being responsible for cost and/or maintenance. Well, so far I've been given notice of number 1, variance application to have the 2 houses planned next to me have their septic beds closer to my property line than township bylaws allow. Number 2, legal notice to allow fencing to be built on the property line with half the linear cost be assigned to 123 ABCDR, my address. Number 3, notice from the developer lawyers that I, as an adjacent property, will be required to abide by their neighborhood aesthetic requirements, which comes down to rules on house, garage, outbuilding colors, vehicles allowed on property, and color of flowers allowed in publicly visible flower beds, red, white and blue only. Excuse me? I live in Canada. Red, white maybe, but blue? Yeah, right. Try again. I bought this house without deed restrictions. My name is Karen, I'm the original 1967 version. My mother had a promotion about the bewitch I would grow up to be. Bring it on. So, update, township council meetings are on the 15th of each month. Last night I attended, as this was when the variance application for the development next door was to be discussed and decided on. I sat through 2 very boring hours of other TWSP business when it came to the developer's turn to explain why they needed the variance. It came down to, because the septic beds would need to be raised due to water table heights, moving the septics further back on the lots would allow additional flat area between the houses and the septic beds, so that future homeowners would have more room to install things like an above-ground swimming pool. For those not familiar, putting a swimming pool on a septic bed is a bad thing. First question council asked after the developer went through their arguments: any objections to this variance request? I stood, voiced my objections. These are 1/4 acre lots, it's not a space issue, and wanting more room for toys is not a valid reason for a variance for an item that could have environmental impact on my property. End result, variance denied. And Ripe stars, if there are any future updates to this story, then I will of course keep you posted. Anyway, the next one is titled Hilarious HOA Problems. I had fooled around with a neighbor who happens to sit on the board of our building's HOA. It had not been an issue until recently when I declined to fool around with him. I learned that he had been dating some girl, and as far as I can tell, she doesn't know that he has an ex-FWB in the building. Feeling uncomfortable about the FWB arrangement, I told him very politely what my reasons were for saying no to a request for a quick fun. I had to remind him very calmly and rationally that he cannot grandfather in casual sex when he's in a relationship with someone else. Life does not work that way. Well, I think he's angry. I cannot prove it without a lot of expensive legal fees that I don't think is worth the squeeze. In short, he sits on the HOA board, and I'm pretty certain that he is an influential voice on the Architectural Improvement Committee. That's the committee that residents have to submit unit alteration applications to for approval. And yes, even for something like wall-mounting TVs or putting a planter on the balcony. One of the items that needs pre-approval is outdoor furniture. I imagined it was pretty pro forma. Fill out the application, make sure it's heavy enough that it won't fly off the balcony and hurt someone on the street, and bam, approved. When I saw this set that I liked for an outdoor refresh, I placed the order because I thought it would be approved without problems. It was a limited sale and a very good deal, but then I got the rejection on Friday. To make matters worse, the furniture had already been delivered because it took the HOA forever to review the application. The reason the committee provided was that the color of the sunbrella cushions was not consistent with the aesthetic of the common spaces. I immediately replied with a question: why did Unit X get approved for their teal cushions and mine got denied? Their reply was that it was an oversight. Moving forward, they would not allow unapproved colors anymore. I just know it was him. I cannot prove it without getting an attorney and alleging inconsistent application of HOA rules, depose them and find out. But again, the juice is not worth the squeeze. I can get new cushions that are neutral, but I cannot return my fun cushions and I'm out several $100s because of it. This sucks so much. And the next one is a story from r/am I the jerk. Our 13-year-old son has a disability from birth. He uses crutches to walk and has a speech impediment. Other than that, he's very bright and kind. He is studying everything a grade ahead than what he is supposed to. He's been homeschooled for the last 2 years because of how severe the bullying got. It kills me to say it, but he has never had an actual friend other than his younger sister. We have tried so hard to facilitate friendships, but it's never clicked. Then 7 months ago, we got new neighbors. My son and their son were the same age and they started hanging out. My wife and I were happy beyond words. My son was also extremely happy to finally have a friend his own age. Last month, we were made aware of videos the boy was making of my son and sending them to children from his school. Very cruel words were used in the video, including the R slur. We were heartbroken to find out that our son was aware of the videos and was allowing his friend to make fun of him just so they could hang out. Despite his protests, I brought up the videos with the boy's parents. I was furious. To their credit, they were extremely apologetic and the mother was so upset that she was crying. The boy was very embarrassed and was made to apologize to my son, but now he's refusing to become friends with my son again, which has devastated him. I'm now second-guessing all my actions and I'm wondering if I should have just reached out to the boy in private. My son didn't want me to involve the parents, but I did it anyway. I'm feeling very guilty. My wife is also very upset over the wild thing. We have already started therapy for our son, just wondering if I did the right thing here. My son won't even talk to me anymore. Comment number 1, not the a-hole, the only a-hole is your son's ex-friend. This is obviously incredibly hard for your son to process, but I think you did what's right here. Comment number 2, not the a-hole, we have to protect our children even from themselves. Your son may not appreciate it now, but he'll understand when he gets older. You should reach out to Big Brother, Big Sisters or a disability rights organization who may be able to help him get more involved with the community to find friends. Good luck, love your child, everything else will work itself out. And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know what you think about this story in the comments. I'm very curious about what you have to say. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. When it comes to my extended family, there is a big history of bad blood between everybody. My aunt and cousins were basically disowned by my mother and my grandma years ago. My aunt was a selfish woman and her children seemed to follow right in her footsteps. They thought they could do anything they wanted and not worry about anybody else. It got to the point that my aunt was stealing money from my grandma and then lying about it. I know other things that happened that my mom just never wanted to talk about, but basically, my extended family are horrible people. My grandma, on the other hand, is my favorite person in the world. She does not have any issue putting her foot down when needed, but is usually extremely nice. I don't know how my aunt turned out the way she did when my grandma is so nice. She also owns a large area of land that due to her age I am the one that maintains it. Due to a small family that seemed to not have the best of luck with old age, my mother and I are the only people that are actively in my grandma's will. My aunt and cousins were written out of it once she realized how horrible they were. The thing is though that they wanted back in and my aunt acted like she really cared and wanted to come back and reconnect with grandma in her old age. She wanted to give her daughter another chance and soon my aunt and cousins were a constant fixture around the house. They had started taking care of her and I could tell right away that something was fishy because she started getting sick as soon as they came in on the scene. My aunt would always seem to know exactly what to give my grandma to feel better. My grandma praised her for helping her and I knew that she was thinking about changing her will and putting them back in. I was worried something else was going on, so I decided to be sneaky when my aunt was around to see if I could find out what she was doing. It turns out she was putting small doses of some kind of chemical in my grandma's food that would make her feel sick. Then my aunt would give her something to feel better. I looked into the thing and it was not safe for consumption. Long-term use could have actually killed my grandma. My aunt was also talking about my mother when she didn't know I was around to hear it, making up lies that my mother didn't care about her and was just after her money and land. She wanted my mom out of the will, and when she found out I was in it, she started making up stories about me too. I wanted so badly to bust in and start yelling at my aunt, but I knew that I couldn't just do that without any proof of something going on. Instead, I went up to my aunt and told her that I knew what she was using to make my grandma sick, and if she did it again, I was going to call the police. That seemed to work because she was not getting sick anymore. I had also noticed that on the edge of the property, my aunt had started building a house that her and my cousins were living in. It was not visible from the main house, so my grandma did not know, and for a long time I did not either. And by the way, Ripe Stars, I guess that OP in this story has a very large property, or rather the grandma has. Also, I looked at some other posts of the commenter and they were asking stuff about landscaping and gardening and in general taking care of trees, so I think they also have something like a forest or whatever on their property. So I guess that's why it would make sense that the grandma and OP did not notice the house. Either way, I hated that my aunt was taking advantage of a nice old lady that took care of her. I wanted to get back at her, so I came up with the perfect plan. I knew that I could not get my grandma to call the police on her own daughter that she thought she was reconnecting with. I told my grandma about the illegal house and she was not really sure what to do. My grandma is an old woman and is not really sharp anymore. It is hard for her to do things for herself physically, but she is mentally also starting to go. The will is known to the family, so it is not a secret that in it I was going to be given the land and house. My aunt hated that, of course, and wanted it for her children, who thought that they were entitled to the land instead of me. They never helped take care of their grandma and instead caused more messes and talked about how they couldn't wait for her to die and get the land. The fact that I didn't punch them amazes me to this day. Since my grandma is not always there mentally, I was given written permission to the land. I don't own the land legally, but I did sign papers that said I would take care of the land and basically own it in practice. That meant I had the right to stop my aunt from having an illegal house on the land. I told her to get rid of the house, and she just laughed and told me that soon I would be out of the picture and she could kick me off the land. I had given her a chance and she refused to take it, so my next call was to the police. I told them that there were people trespassing and building an illegal house on the land that I was in charge of. When the police arrived, my aunt and cousins did not think they did anything wrong and just said that it was their right to build a house on the property since it belonged to their mother. The fact of the matter was that I had paperwork and that they did not have a single thing. They were arrested for trespassing and taken off of the property. They also were forced to demolish the house that was on the property illegally. They had never ever gotten a building permit or anything, so they were also in trouble with the state for that one. The cherry on top though was something that I got to play for the police when they came over. Remember how I confronted my aunt about trying to poison my grandma? I had my phone going and got the entire conversation we had recorded. In the end, she was also arrested for elderly abuse because of that. I also wanted to personally sue her for the property damage that her building a house had caused. All the money, of course, would end up going right back into my grandma's estate, but I had the right to sue on her behalf. I was given the money and asked the court to grant a restraining order against my aunt and cousins to keep them away from my grandma for her own safety. It was granted, and now my aunt was not able to even go near my grandma and tried to get her to change the will. I then decided that they actually had picked a pretty good spot on the property to build a house. I had been living close by and just traveling every single day. I built my own house after getting all of the permits and things. This way I could stay closer to my grandma in the time that I would still take care of her. I would not care about sharing land with my extended family if they were not such entitled backstabbing people. If they truly cared, they would have ended up in the will as well and it would have been fine. But instead, I'm going to make sure that when the time comes and my grandma passes, they don't get a single penny or grain of dirt from the land. It will be my property, and the second they try and step on it, I will just have them arrested again. And yeah, ripe stars, it seems like some people don't even care about their own family members when it comes to money or owning property. I guess some people value that more than human relationships. Truly, truly sad. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.